thinking. All of you have, when you speak, you have with you a card. They keep changing the color of it. So what is the color tonight, ladies and gentlemen? Thank you very much. Okay, blue. If you can hand that to one of us who gives you a microphone to speak so we can get your name accurately. We are on the record here. We're being broadcast live on Times-Dispatch.com. A transcript of this will appear in a future Sunday, and I think there might be a story in tomorrow's paper. Olivia Milo is there. Hello, Olivia. If you need some water, it's off the side over here. Help yourself, and we'll go. So let me throw the opening question to the panel. What are you hearing about this issue? What's the discussion on the phones, in the blogs, and also among other venues about this issue? Ginger, you want to take it first?
Sure, Tom. Well, actually, ever since the Virginia legislature left Richmond in February, on time this year, I might add, which was delightful, the fireworks began, revealing several discrepancies in the way Virginia's current ethics laws are interpreted. And this isn't because the law was changed while they were in Richmond. This isn't new. This is just that now it's the governor and the lieutenant governor that we're reading about it on an everyday basis. And we're hearing on a regular basis at the Press Association from our members with their stories, their editorials, that citizens are now fed up. They want change. They want to see something happen when the legislature comes back to town. So it's encouraging. I think it's about time, and I'm excited to hear from the audience tonight.
Good. Thank you. Andrew?
Well, as Olympia Miola and our other political reporters have spent much of the year chronicling, the impetus for the look at Virginia's disclosure laws is the scandal largely involving Governor McDonnell. As Ginger alluded to, there's a businessman named Johnny Williams Sr. who's the CEO of a company called Star Scientific, and he has given the governor and members of the governor's immediate family more than $166,000 in gifts and loans, some of which were disclosed and some were not. And this tumult has underscored the comparative laxity of Virginia's disclosure laws. Under Virginia's current law, an office holder is not required to disclose gifts that are given to his or her spouse or to immediate family members. And also of note, under Virginia's current law, an office holder needs to disclose the amount of a loan but does not need to give the name of the creditor. So a lot of what the governor and his family received from Mr. Williams was not disclosed, and that's underscored that some folks on both sides of the aisle think that the laws need to be molded so that they become more transparent.
Okay, thanks for that overview from the newsroom. Megan, what are you hearing among your constituencies?
Well, it's been close to a year. The Center for Public Integrity did a state-by-state comparison of each state's susceptibility for corruption. That was not measuring actual corruption, it was measuring the potential for corruption. And Virginia had maybe the second or third worst grade in all of the United States. And at the time, I got very defensive because, and I know a lot of citizens even got very defensive because at the top of the list were states like New Jersey and I think maybe even Louisiana. And we all knew that, well, those states are notoriously dirty. But again, the focus was supposed to be on the potential for corruption and not actual corruption. And in that survey, they listed all these criteria and things, and it was about the state of their Freedom of Information Act or their equivalent, their Public Records Act. It included several categories, and one of them was disclosure laws, and one was about ethics and ethics commissions and whether or not there was independent study. So at the time, as I said, I was a little bit defensive about it, and then sort of the doors got blown off a few months ago, and I started hearing from a lot of both citizens, from local politicians who wanted to know what their responsibilities were, and also certainly from reporters who were asking what the laws of disclosure required and didn't require. So there's certainly a culture that has to be addressed here. It's not just the law that has to be fixed, but it is a culture that has to be addressed as well. The Virginia way has gotten us very far, and we have a relatively clean record in terms of corruption, but it may be time to make some adjustments in how the approach to openness is taken from here.
Okay. Next, the panel's opening. We've got a short video on the bigger issue of how Virginia compares to the situations in other states, brought to you by our PolitiFact team.
Virginia's ethics laws operate under two tenets. The first is that politicians ought to decide for themselves what gifts are appropriate to accept from lobbyists and favor seekers, so the law is virtually silent on gifts.
The second tenet is that any gifts that are accepted should be publicly disclosed. In theory, full disclosure allows the public to decide for itself whether a politician is on the take.
But the problem is that the disclosure laws politicians have written for themselves are so full of loopholes that the public can't possibly know what gifts a politician has taken or what financial interest a politician has.
These loopholes are at the center of a scandal involving $160,000 that Governor McDonnell and his family accepted in loans and gifts from Johnny Williams, the founder of Star Scientific, a diet supplementary company. Amid the controversy, Virginia's disclosure laws are coming under fire for being too lax. The General Assembly is saying it's going to improve them next year, and all this raises the question, where do Virginia's laws stand compared to other states?
Virginia is one of a dozen states that don't put a specific financial limit on the amount of gifts that the governor can receive from lobbyists and others doing business with the state. 41 states in the country have an ethics commission that can examine allegations of misconduct involving public officials. But Virginia is one of 9 states that don't have such a panel. While running for governor in 2009, Bob McDonnell vowed to create an ethics commission, citing it as a key hole in the state's oversight of its politicians. But ultimately, that watchdog panel was never started.
Without financial limits on gifts or a panel to investigate conflicts of interest, Virginia's ethics laws rely on disclosure. A gift worth more than $50 must be disclosed, as do any series of gifts from any one person worth more than $100. Virginia law also requires statewide politicians and legislators to disclose any source of income worth $10,000 or more. That's the highest threshold in the nation. Here in the Commonwealth, like in most other states, disclosure forms don't require reporting gifts from lobbyists to a public official's spouse or children. This is a key concern in the McDonnell scandal because most of the gifts were to the governor's family and were not disclosed. And although Johnny Williams made $120,000 in loans to McDonnell's business and family, the governor was never required to disclose Williams as a creditor. That's because Virginia is one of 24 states that doesn't require public officials to list creditors by name. They simply check a box if they have loans of more than $10,000. And the creditors are identified only by industry sector, such as banking or insurance.
You can see for yourself how Virginia stacks up against other states. We have our charts on our website, politifactvirginia.com.
Now I'm going to do something, and I may wear out my welcome, but we have 2 state legislators here, and I really appreciate them being here. But I'd like them to come up to the top and join the panel for the conversation because you offer an interesting perspective. Jimmy Massey, Senator McEachin, come on up. This is totally unrehearsed, and there's some risk here. But I'm going to welcome you to the panel over here. And the chance of getting somebody from both sides of the aisle, either you guys didn't go to the dinner you were invited to, or you're really interested in this topic to the point where you're going to spend another evening. But I wonder if you could share some insight. The panel gave a very good overview of the facts and the climate over here, but from an insider perspective, just what is the issue in your minds, and what can we expect? I'm not asking you to lay down bookmaker odds from the General Assembly, but what can we expect from the solution standpoint? And will we have status quo, or will there be change from your prediction?
I'm going to defer to the senior senator from Richmond.
Oh, okay, here we
Let
go.
him go first.
I was going to say age before beauty, but okay. So I think there are a couple of things that you can expect, or at least I hope. I've said this to both my Democratic colleagues in both chambers, as well as my Republican friends in both chambers. And so what I hope we will see is a bipartisan bill. I think the last thing that Virginians want is to see us throwing sticks and stones about what ethics reform should look like. The second thing I think, and let me say this, because since the Times-Dispatch is so widely read, my colleagues are going to read this, and the last thing I want my colleagues to think is that I'm laying down markers and saying it's my way or the highway. These are thoughts of mine. I hope to be part of a discussion in my chamber about what this looks like, but these are in no way comments of mine that represent the whole Democratic caucus or even a fraction of it, and nor are they intended to say that, again, this is the way it has to be. Excuse me. So one thing I would like to see is something with some penalty to it. Right now, one of the problems with our disclosure laws is that there is no penalty. What that penalty might look like, it might be if you fail to disclose, you end up paying the amount that you failed to disclose times X to the literary fund. Maybe that's a penalty that'll have some teeth in it. Another thing that I'd like to wrestle with is the notion of what is a gift. Now, it sounds easy, right? Gift, somebody gives you something, somebody gives one of your children something, it's a gift. But I don't think it's that easy, because when I think about my youngest daughter, who I'm very proud of, in fact, all three girls, I'm proud of all of you, but my youngest daughter just got a partial scholarship to Parsons, and she's going to be a world-famous fashion designer. Well, her scholarship wasn't need-based, it was merit-based. And so is that a gift? Is that a gift that should be banned? And I don't think there's any person in this room or any person in Virginia that thinks that's a gift that should be banned. I think that probably maybe a lot of people think it ought to be reported, because even though the example I just gave you was an out-of-state college, suppose one day I'm on Senate Finance, and one day UVA gives my granddaughter a scholarship, a merit-based scholarship to school. That's something that probably ought to be reported, that folks ought to know about. But again, should it be banned? I suspect not. I have a very dear friend who I went to college with, a guy by the name of John Whitehurst. He's a political consultant in San Francisco. On occasion, I don't drink, but on occasion, he sends my wife a case of wine from his vineyard in San Francisco. He was in our wedding. We've maintained contact over the years. I was in his wedding. Should that be something that Colette can't get? Should that be something that's banned? I don't think there's a person in this room who thinks that should be banned. Report it? Yeah, I don't know that I necessarily have a problem with the reporting. A ban on gifts to us as legislators, I can deal with that. I think if that's what the public wants and that's what the Assembly passes, I think that's probably a good thing. But those are just some of the issues that I think we have to wrestle with. And I don't pretend that I have thought about all the issues yet. One thing I have done is I've taken the hints from our two United States senators, both Warner and Kane, have suggested that there may be some guidance in the federal system. So I've started to take a look at that to see how they handle things. And the best I can tell you right now is that my thought process is still evolving and trying to get my arms around this very interesting subject.
Okay, good. Are you happy you yielded now? No.
I always like to go second.
Okay, all right.
I want to thank you and the Times-Dispatch for doing this. You all have done 48 of these, I heard you say earlier. I don't know. I've been to a number of them, and they've always added value, and it's a great opportunity. I'm a business guy, and I think about you all as my customers, not my constituents. So this has been a great opportunity for me over the years to listen to my customers and hear from my customers. I got to tell you, I came to listen tonight. I didn't come to talk. So you're going to catch me a little flat-footed tonight on the talking. But just for a minute, I think we ought to rise above and the weeds we're down in and see the bigger picture just for a second, and then let's get down in the weeds. The bigger picture is we have a lot to be thankful for living in Virginia. Virginia is the best managed state, the best state to do business in, fourth best state to raise a child in by Teachers Union magazine, Education Week. We have the finest system of public higher education, on and on and on. we have a lot to be thankful for in Virginia. And we give you that value for the 48th lowest price in the country. State and local taxation as a percentage of the average Virginian's revenue is 48. So that's a lot to be thankful for. Now, are we perfect? Absolutely not. And I think that's what Donald and I do every day, is we try to address those things where we're not perfect. Obviously, I got to tell you, in the 6 years, I was recruited for this position. I never really ran for this position. And in the 6 years I've been in the legislature, nobody has ever asked me or offered to do anything for me. I have a pretty high bar that I have ever been uncomfortable with. So I think in general we have a system that's working fairly well. Is it perfect? Obviously not, given the results and some of the things that have gone on the last few months. I, like Donald, think that this ethics reform is going to be a nice opportunity to work together. It's going to be a bipartisan issue because we believe in good. I know Donald and I both believe in good full disclosure. Let the sun shine in. So I can tell you from the Republican side, in the Republican House of Delegates, we have a committee formed within our caucus. I'm not an individual member of that committee, but I did sit down with the senior person thereof about a week ago and got an update on it. And we are taking this ethics reform situation very, very seriously. We are doing a very broad and deep discussion. We're looking at all the options. There are some, we're gelling around some concepts, but we haven't put a lot of specifics on it yet. We still have November, December, January. We've got 90 days left before we have to come up. But I think one of the areas you're going to see a lot of reform in is the disclosure. Nobody's ever offered my wife anything. I never really even thought about my wife and my children. So obviously, though, I think we need to have just an open book with respect to disclosure. There are some things that Donald says, if my parents are giving me gifts, if long-term friends are giving me gifts, those sorts of things, I think we've got to make some exceptions for that. On the gifts ban, I tell you, I think we need to be a little careful there. One of the daunting things that Donald and I have to do is we now sit in judgment of every issue in the state of Virginia from A to Z. That's a daunting job. How much of that spectrum do you think Jimmy Massey or Donald McEachin is an expert in? I can tell you, it's a pretty narrow sliver. Okay? So I spend a lot of time educating myself on the other parts of the sliver. So we want to be careful when people offer me, where I have drawn the line, Jimmy Massey has drawn the line, I will accept gifts, travel, and opportunities to travel when that travel is highly educational for me about an issue that I need to be educated about. I will not take a trip with you, and I have been offered some trips that's just purely for pleasure. So I think disclosure is going to be probably the key focus. We do have an ethics panel that's in the legislature already that has subpoena power and so on and so forth. We're looking at beefing that up. I think you're going to see us make a big push on education incoming. I don't know, Donald, did you have any ethics training when you came in?
Yeah, and that's one of the things I think we are missing out on in the legislature. When I was a freshman delegate, actually before I was sworn in, Jeff Shapiro, Tony Troy, and I can't remember who the third person was, gave us sort of a thumbnail sketch of ethics in how how things work in the legislature, and that was invaluable. And I'm sad to say that, as far as I know, it doesn't take place today. But in 1995, when I first got elected, it was really helpful.
So I think you're going to see a big push on disclosure, a big push on education, and we're going to look at the whole kit and caboodle, have a broad and deep discussion. And I'm like Donald. I think you're going to see a lot of bipartisanship on whatever the final bill is that comes up in January.
Is there, panel, any jump in here anytime if you've got any observations with your new panel mates?
I have a question for the legislators. Senator McEachin alluded to some input from Senator Warner and Senator Kaine. One of the things that Senator Kaine has said is that he would be in favor of something along the congressional model in which you have a limitation on the dollar amount that you can accept. He said that from his perspective, folks understand if a governor or an office holder goes to a college and gives a speech and gets a ball cap or a plaque, So if you had, say, a $100 limitation on gifts, people would understand that. But somebody's not going to buy influence if you have a limitation at that level. So, Delegate Massey, you talked about a disclosure model. What do you think the appetite is for setting a dollar limit on the amount, the worth of a gift that lawmakers could accept?
Yes,
I don't have a problem with setting a dollar amount, but as Donald alluded to, a lot depends on how you define a gift. Because Donald and I have people coming through our shop all the time during the session, and the Virginia wine people come through, on and on and on, and they want to bring you, we have businesses come through, and they want to bring you and give you a sample of their product. They're talking to you about, we're creating jobs in Virginia. We want you all to create an environment we can create more jobs, and here's the product we're making. Go home and sample it. And so, you got to be careful how you define gift. The other thing I would say to you is, let's take the education issue, how you define gifts. Just for instance, what did Jimmy Massey know about uranium mining before he came to the legislature? Right there. Okay? So as a business person, my caucus is looking at me and saying, Jimmy, we have a big business decision to make here about uranium mining. And so when I'm offered the opportunity to go to Canada and to visit a uranium mine in Canada, when I'm offered the opportunity to sit down with all the Canadian legislators, some Canadian legislators, with Canadian regulators, and have a broad and deep discussion about uranium mining and learn a lot about uranium mining, I don't think that's something you all want to prevent me from doing. I think that's in the best interest of the state of Virginia, that I get educated on uranium mining, because we got a big decision to make there. I took a trip to France for the same reason. When you go to France, I'll tell you, France, the southern part of France looks exactly like Pennsylvania County. The geology is the same. The weather is the same. The uranium mining looks the same. They've got 60 years of experience, and we were able to talk to the government, the local businesses, the local governments. It was an incredibly educational. I did it in 3 days, 4 days, by the way, and I can tell you, it wore me out. It wasn't, we did have, I flew nice, I ate well, but it was exhausting. But I got a great education on something that I need to make a decision on that I knew nothing about. So I think it depends on the level of the gift and then how you define gift.
Senator, I think Virginia does not have an ethics commission, and the 41 states do. I think that's one of the most important steps forward that the General Assembly could tackle this year, and make it one that has teeth. Make it one that investigates and coordinates the way that all campaign disclosure is given. I worry that we can become too friendly in the legislature in January and February with a product that everyone can agree on, but still may not have enough teeth to really go forward. How do you see the Ethics Commission being formed?
I will confess I haven't given that a great deal of thought, but I have thought about it. I think that will likely be a component of what happens with the overall ethics package. But again, I have to emphasize that in the Senate, I don't believe either caucus has had an opportunity to form a committee. I'm very much looking forward to seeing my colleagues at the Senate Finance Retreat so we can begin these discussions. That's, I think, the 20th and 21st of November. But yes, I think that will be a component of it. But again, I have to emphasize the need for bipartisanship on this, because while I understand your comment about us being too friendly, I think the last thing we need is to disappoint the people of Virginia by not being able to come up with a product and trying to compare, just to use Jimmy and myself as examples. Jimmy's product is better than my product. No, we're both working together to fix a problem, to restore, or to build up the trust of the people in Virginia in government. So I think it's real important that we reach this on a bipartisan basis.
I'd like to emphasize that I think both Donald and I, are public servants, and I got to tell you, this whole Giftgate thing, the week after the Rolex watch was disclosed, I walked into my church that Sunday. I have a nice watch, but it's not a Rolex. And, coming out the front door, one of my church members, who I've known for 25 years, said, "Jimmy, who paid for that watch?" So it reflects poorly. I tell you, Donald and I, we're doing this. I think Donald and I don't agree on much public policy-wise. But Donald, I know where Donald's heart is. He's trying to be a true public servant, just like I'm trying to be a true public servant. And this whole thing, now I know all my friends are thinking, well, you guys are just all on the take. I'm doing this for $18,000 a year, and you guys are all on the take. And so it reflects poorly on us as well. So I think that's going to help drive that bipartisanship. And, we want to solve it. We want to have disclosure and let the sun shine in, too.
Let's go to the audience. I'm going to borrow one of you all's mic. Can you share if you get a chance to ask a question? Open it up to the audience. We originally set this up for suggestions on solutions. If you have questions as well, we have a rare opportunity to have legislators from both sides of the aisle. Anybody have any comments, recommendations? Yeah. You know the drill. State your name.
Identify yourself.
Identify yourself.
As I said, Jimmy, I knew
I
something.
got to do it.
I've been pushing
No.
the mute button on and off.
There you go. I'm your friendly
Hello?
IT man. Yeah, you're on.
Okay,
You're on.
thanks,
Go.
Tom. As I said, I did know Johnny Williams. I was an early stockholder in Star Scientific because a friend of ours' son was working there. What seems to be the problem is this thing just sort of hit the administration and they couldn't handle it. The anti-block drug thing. What do you think about that?
Anybody?
Well,
Anybody?
What do you think about it? First off, why don't you, Mr. Cole? What do you think about it?
What do I think
Yeah,
about it?
yeah.
I don't think the product's very good. I tried it. But are you talking about the company?
I'm just talking about your own question about what do you think about they couldn't handle it, picking up on.
I don't think the administration, the governor,
Right.
could handle it.
Yeah.
Or didn't read the rules, and I guess I'm learning here there weren't any rules. Right?
no, there were some rules, but I think that he badly misinterpreted some of those rules. For instance,
What about Attorney General?
well, let me deal with one question at a time. But if you start off with the notion that I have signed a contract, that makes me legally obligated to pay a debt, and then someone comes and relieves me of that obligation to pay that debt, that's a gift. That's a gift under anybody's definition of gift. And so the notion that the governor somehow didn't report a $16,000 wedding day present because it was to his daughter for payment of catering or whatever it was payment for, just stuns me as a lawyer.
Wedding.
And so I think certainly just basic rules of legal construction would lead you to the conclusion that that was a gift. As far as the Attorney General is concerned, I probably shouldn't comment right now because I've got an interest in trying to get at some emails to see what he knew and when he knew it. But I will say this, certainly the first duty of a lawyer is to avoid the appearance of impropriety. And so I don't care what kind of Chinese walls were allegedly built up around you to prevent you from knowing stuff, you're still the head of the law firm. And if you've got an involvement with someone who's got something adverse to the Commonwealth of Virginia, you need not to be involved with it because that gives what? The appearance of impropriety. It's like our first canon. So I think there's some, for lawyers to have done what they did, both our governor and our attorney general, I think is unfortunate. And I'm trying to be kind because I'm in the middle of a campaign and I don't want to be seen as overly partisan, but I think it's unfortunate and bad.
Well, I just have one further comment. I'm in the investment business. The key word in our business is full disclosure. It doesn't seem to be a word that goes around our little Capitol Hill there.
Thanks for that comment. Appreciate it.
Comment.
Yeah. Welcome.
Hi.
Hi. Good.
Thank you for having me.
Sure.
How you doing? I'm Mark Valvo, and I keep hearing about disclosure, and I just don't understand why you're taking gifts. I mean, I work in manufacturing, and I had a vendor in recently who had Walmart in their corporate facilities. They were working on a project together. They had a Walmart representative there, and they ordered in sandwiches, and the Walmart representative said, I can't eat those sandwiches. I have to go out. I can't take anything. My company's the same way. I can't take anything more than a pen or a mouse pad. And so we keep talking about disclosure. You know, I got to be honest. Trips to France, I can't see it. You know, if you're conducting state business, the state should be paying for you to go over there and do your research. But accepting those types of gifts is way too much. And I don't want to hear disclosure. I just want to hear you're not going to accept any gifts. I mean, Walmart's the biggest corporation in the country. Somehow they figured it out, and I can't figure out why it's so difficult. Now, I do understand maybe you have long-term friends giving wives or kids gifts, but, you know, what the governor did, that's indefensible, absolutely indefensible. And to try to defend that is just ridiculous. And I think it needs to be, you know, forget about disclosure, no gifts.
I mean, I was going to ask you to sharpen what you thought might be a solution here for the General Assembly.
No gifts.
Okay.
We'll give you a pen. That's your parting gift. You know, I mean, if we accepted, you know, you talked about being in business. If you worked at Walmart or you worked where I work and you accepted anything that the governor accepted, you'd be fired. Period. That'd be it. You wouldn't be, you know, give some money, give 5 times the gift to charity or something like that. I mean, I understand it's the governor, so it's hard to fire the governor, so maybe you have to come up with some kind of penalty or something like that. But you just, you know, you wouldn't be working there. You know, accepting a Rolex watch or something like that, you wouldn't be working.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate that. Anybody want to chime in on that? Yeah. Come back to you. How are you tonight?
All right.
Good, thank you.
Wouldn't it relieve...
You just got to hold up to your mic.
Wouldn't it relieve the pressure off of you in the committee if there was a governing body concerning gifting so that it took out your worries about being proprietors? As she alluded, there would be a committee who would be or a commission who would be responsible for making those decisions, taking them out of your hands, so that you wouldn't be in an awkward position, and there would be a governing body that we as the public knew were having an idea of what was going on.
Thank you.
So let me take a stab at that. Then I'm going to hand the mic to Jimmy for a second. But so yes, ma'am, I do believe that a commission to oversee what we're doing is a good thing. And what that commission looks like, I don't know right now, but I think it's a good thing. But I don't think the commission should set the rules. And here's why. I think that you all elect us to make some hard decisions, and you all can hold us accountable for that. If we put together a commission of unelected people to make those decisions, you can't hold them accountable. They'll be sort of like off in an ivory tower making whatever decisions they want to make, and you can't hold them accountable for the rules. And so I think it's going to be left to the General Assembly to make the rules and to set the commission. That's the way our democracy works. And you know what? You all have to hold us accountable for what we do or for what we don't do.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm somewhat in agreement with Donald there. Again, I'm not on my area of public policy expertise, and I wasn't prepared to speak tonight. But we do already have some sort of an ethics commission that exists already, or an ethics panel. And I think what you're going to see is, I know that in the House, it's under discussion about what the powers of that are and what how that entity ought to operate. And I think it's going to be a more robust structure is probably what we're going to propose. So I do think you're going to see some movement on that in that direction. But I do think it's going to be, it's going to be at the discretion and at the direction of the legislature via a bill.
Things, a scholarship for a child, those type of things could be, you wouldn't have to worry about the decision would be made and it would be accepted or not. Can you understand what I'm trying to say?
You're talking about submitting each whenever we're offered something, submitting it to this commission for approval. Okay, now I don't think Donald. Yeah, that's different. Donald and I weren't thinking along that line, but that's kind of what the Ethics Committee at the United States Congress does. I mean, so like Donald said, Senators Warner and Kane gave us some suggestions. I know that's under consideration, but here again, I don't know where it'll end up. I do believe it's under consideration.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Appreciate it. Comment over here. Slide here.
My name is Julian Williams, and I've got a question for our panel. I'll take the pressure off of our friends. I'll give it to you in a minute.
There's questions on the back of the card.
So I want to direct this to our panel and take the pressure off you guys, and that is the paper has reported a fairly extensive legal bill that the governor is running up in defense of the story about the gifts he's received. Who should pay that legal bill? I have an opinion. I don't need to say what it is because it probably leaks out in my attitude here, but who should pay that bill? It bothers me that the citizens should have to pay something like that.
Well, I think what Virginians think is pretty clear. Our political team reported on the results of a poll conducted by the University of Mary Washington, and I believe they said it was about 89% said that Governor McDonnell should pay his own legal bills and it should not be the responsibility of Virginia taxpayers.
I would add it's fairly common around the state, at state and local levels, that when an individual on a public body is in litigation, that typically that public body will pay for it. The taxpayers usually do end up paying for it. It is usually paid through insurance, and there is some discussion about whether then the insurance premiums would go up, which then would be another direct cost to the taxpayers. I just would like to, from my standpoint, since I'm in the disclosure business, that I would like to point out that that information about those about those bills was brought to light because of a Freedom of Information Act request, and so we need to make sure that those kinds of records are always available. And that's not necessarily in his case, and I should, but when there is other litigation that might have to do with any kind of maybe a discrimination suit or a tort claim, some sort of accident on public property, and there are undoubtedly members in the public who think that that the government should not be contesting this or they shouldn't be fighting it, but there will be legal bills that come out of that. And then there has to be the discussion of who's going to pay for those.
I'm sure the insurance companies will be fighting to avoid having to pay anything related to this situation.
And nobody needs to guess what he thinks there. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Williams. Yes, ma'am. Thank you for coming. Sure.
My name is Marilyn Lipsis-Flax, and I have two comments. The first is that because of the lack of adult movies during the summer, this whole thing was fascinating. I think in a horrible way, like watching a train wreck. And I have to say that every morning when I read the paper, and I do get the paper at home.
Thank you, ma'am.
It was just.
I'm not ashamed to do that either.
It was just endlessly interesting, but like watching a train wreck. But I think one thing that we don't think of, and this just occurred to me a second ago, that I don't necessarily want to say I want the governor punished, but he really has lost his national stature. And that is a huge price to pay, no matter if he pays his legal bills or whatever. That's a huge price to pay. And I think it's, what he should pay. But the other question I have is, historically, with the last, say, 10 governors, do we know what kind of gifts they were given? What happened? Is this been the only time that this has been such a huge, horrible problem? I mean, I personally don't have a clue.
Yeah, it's a matter of degree. We know that other governors have accepted gifts. Governor Kane accepted I believe, a Caribbean vacation, but nothing that has spawned this kind of investigation. Other governors have accepted gifts to varying degrees, but they disclosed them. What brought this into what made it such a story is that much of it was not disclosed, and because the benefactor had business before the state. So it was perceived as an important conflict of interest.
Okay. Good question. Yes, sir. Welcome.
I'm Dennis Bussey. I like Mark's idea of no gifts. And so here's a suggestion to the legislators. When you're forming your legislation or whatever it is that's going to change the current dynamic, no gifts. But at the same time, let's recognize that the things that you mentioned, the trips to go to France, the trips to go to look at the uranium places all over the world, to go maybe explore some of the products that some of the people in Virginia want you to understand and see, the wine or whatever it is. At the same time, there needs to be some way of allowing you, the legislators, to have those experiences and to acquire those products or to at least use those products, but they're not given to you personally as a gift. There must be some way that could be accounted for so that everybody would know what's going on, and it would be, I'm just suggesting you bundle that all up in one package, and I think that we, the citizens, would feel much better about that.
Excellent point.
I think Donald and I would probably agree. I work for 80,000 people that live in western Henrico County. Donald works for a couple 100,000 that live in Richmond and where else? Donald?
Richmond, Hanover, Charles City.
Yeah, and so I'm perfectly, I make decisions on their behalf all the time. And I'm perfectly happy to make decisions on their behalf about what I do to educate myself and the gifts I take and fully disclose that to them. And I work for them, and then they can make a decision on that. So it's going to, what you're getting at is what Donald and I were talking about earlier, is how you define gifts. And I don't think you want to define gifts so tightly as to eliminate the opportunity for us, Donald and myself, to get educated on a vast array of public policy decisions that we have to make that we are not experts on initially on behalf of our constituents.
Okay. Good. Another comment? Yes, sir. Welcome.
My name is John Bullock. I'm one of your constituents. I don't think you have to worry about defining gifts. And the reason I say that, if your trip to France was given to a football player that goes to the University of Virginia, the NCAA would have put him off the team. When we say gifts, I think we misunderstand that, because the cost to the average citizens for the gifts that have been discussed in the last year, if you were living in public housing and you received those gifts, you would have been committed a fraud because you'd had too much income. You'd been put out. I think when you say no gifts, make the gifts $100, but anything more than $100 has to be filed as income tax and income on your income tax return. Failure to do so, failure to disclose, forfeits your pension. Make it serious, because at one time Virginia used to be the leader. Now you're saying that we are 48th and 41st. That seems like the tail is wagging the dog. It's time for Virginia to go back and be leaders. If you can't afford to be an elected official, don't run. But if somebody gives $100, more than $100 to your wife, it has to be on your income tax for the state of Virginia and for the federal government, or you lose your office. Make it serious, guys, because here are people out here now doing these times fighting to survive, and if they received $18,000, they can't get food stamps if it's treated as income. If you're an athlete, you get put off the team, you lose your scholarship. If your children are getting a merit-based scholarship, not only does it have to be disclosed, but we need to know who decided the merit, because somebody could be rewarding you by giving a scholarship to your daughter. So the disclosure has to be mandatory. No ifs, ands, and buts. You get a case of wine, it's valued at $500, then that's $500 you got to include as income. You know, we keep on talking about, you know, an open policy and full disclosure, and out on that are the ones who don't want it disclosed. You know, say, okay, well, let's see your income tax for the last 10 years, so that it's given to the Attorney General. Every elected official has to put that on his income, give it to the Attorney General as a part of his income tax for the state of Virginia and the state and for the United States government. And that we also charge as a felony for anybody who gives more than $100 personally to an elected official or his family. This helps you with how you're going to go about prosecuting or ending this, because it eliminates the favoritism.
Great points. Very good. Megan, one of the interesting things that we had in our coverage, to the point about disclosure, we had a two-day package of stories. The first day was on the overall statewide issues, but the second day story talked about just how disclosure documents are checked. And if you read that story, you came away believing that nobody really checks anything, but the forms are filled out. In some cases, they do it better than others. What's the background on disclosure? Who actually is watching? I mean, the point about commissions was to put somebody in an activist position to be watching or be able to record whether disclosure is meeting the state statutes or what have you. What's the background on this?
Well, I'm not sure I'm qualified to speak on the background of how they
What's the foreground?
But well, and to the gentleman's point, this ties in about both gentlemen about their not being accepting no gifts, is that the gifts are being reported in this stack of papers, which is the Statement of Economic Interests. And this covers not just gifts, but it covers your personal liabilities, securities, payments for talks, meetings, and publications. So there are a lot. This is trying to get a financial profile of office holders, and not just the legislators. And I would note here that this is the first time I've been in the more comfortable chair in a room when I'm with the legislators here. But so it's not just state legislators, it's local legislators, it's the state office holders as well. It's trying to give them a financial picture to show you that there is not a conflict of interest on whatever they're ruling on, whatever business they're considering. Now, to Tom's question, is that these get filed and then they usually get put in a file cabinet, and then they are left in the file cabinet. A few years ago, we had an entrepreneurial spirit and public service-oriented spirit in David Poole, who put together the Virginia Public Access Project, where he started taking these, putting them on his website in a way that you could get at them and sort of do some cross-referencing on gifts and donors and lobbyists and try to get a picture of who's giving money to who. But as far as all the other stuff that's on here, those have just pretty much been sitting in these file cabinets. They were available by paper. You could go in and you could look at them. But what has recently happened, as the Daily Progress in Charlottesville found out last in August, when they went to go review the forms filed by the Alcoholic Beverage Control employees for the people who were required to file them, they found out that even though these were now electronically filed, they were actually now more expensive to review than they had been before, and they were less easy to get at. So they had created a system that made them in electronic form, which was helpful for the filer and helpful for the Secretary of State who accepts them, but it was not helpful for the public. So when we are talking about disclosure, you're not just talking about, hopefully, what's written on this form. You're also talking about the ability of the public and the press to be able to look at those easily, individually, and en masse.
Has that changed, or is that still the way it is, the hard way to get it?
Still the way.
Okay. Thank you for the answer. Anybody not have a chance to speak? Okay. This might be the only public square where everybody who attended spoke. Yeah. I appreciate that. Welcome.
Right. Scott Broadus. I have some points that I think I'll make just for general consideration, be it to General Assembly, commissions or committees studying it, or perhaps preferably that it be a non-General Assembly commission that studies it and recommends it, hopefully with better results than that, again, to prevent gerrymandering. But it would be recognizing that this donor question is very similar to lobbying, and they should be more or less considered together. The second point is that the parties that are most likely to influence integrity are the voters. And so I would suggest that donations be limited to voters only. No corporations, no PACs, no partnerships, no unions, none of these other type of organizations. I think there should be some dollar amount allowed, but very modest, and full disclosure in a public manner. I think that would be some of the best points. The one other one I would add would be to look at the indirect benefits. I don't know if it's true, but I've been told that donations to, for instance, the governor's inaugural celebration, after the inauguration, any residue balance is available to the governor at his own discretion. If that's the case, or if there are similar circumstances, I think they should be restricted in order to keep everything clean. Thank you.
Andrew, do you know the answer to that, whether that's the case?
I'm sorry.
The point, he didn't know whether it was true about the inauguration fund, whether if the money isn't spent, it goes back perhaps to the winner.
I'm not certain. Do you know the answer to that?
I don't know the answer to that.
He didn't put you on the spot.
Yeah.
An honest journalist. He didn't know, and he said so. Okay, very good. God bless you. Okay. Anybody have any other comments? Yeah. Okay, good.
I just want to thank the two representatives. They didn't come here intending to take my ire and maybe some of the other people's ire. They thought they were here to listen. So I appreciate you all being here very much. Maybe your colleagues knew to stay away. I don't know, but thank you for coming and thank you for listening. And I hope that you kind of take some of the feeling and thoughts in the room and maybe take them back to your colleagues as you kind of work through this. I think everyone's excited that you're serious about it, and it sounds like you're interested in doing something about it. So thank you very much for being here.
Right. Any other comments?
I'd like to
I appreciate that comment.
Echo that and thank Senator McEachin and Delegate Massey. You know, I've been the chief lobbyist for the Press Association. We represent all the newspapers in Virginia for, this will be my 28th session going in. You know, so I've seen a lot of changes, and I've seen a lot of situations that the general public never gets to see. And part of that is how hard you work. The hours are incredible. It's all I can do to keep up with you, to get to the subcommittee meetings at 7 a.m. and to stay until 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night with a different set of gentlemen and gentle ladies. And the gifts are always there. I want to tell you there are gifts every single day from multiple folks. It might be the 4-H bringing the sweet little shamrock plants. You know, it can be mugs. I know these gentlemen probably have more coffee mugs than stores have.
My wife won't let me bring any more.
And I applaud her. And you know, and the receptionists, the secretaries, the legislative aides, 9 times out of 10, those are the folks who end up with these gifts because they're edible. And these gentlemen and the gentle ladies down there, they don't have time to even accept these gifts or to utilize them. So the let me get to talk to you gifts, you know, I think are not going to be a problem going forward. Full disclosure here, the Newspaper Association does not have a pact. We do not give gifts. I'm not even able to take them to lunch, certainly no travel, etc. So I'm sort of a different type of lobbyist in the General Assembly because I don't have that ability. We do give our statewide directory. That's the one thing that they are given so that they see where all the newspapers in the state are. That's, in our minds, educational. And primarily for their legislative aid so they can call their local newspaper. But it is not an easy task, what our legislators do. The Press Association always has a good opportunity to speak, but we are not always successful in what we are hoping to achieve when we're down there. But I think for the most part it is honest and it is fair and it's a good system that we have. I believe that the Ethics Commission is going to happen. I believe that's going to make a huge difference in how the reporting requirements are handled. And so with any type of pain, we should have a gain. And I think there will be some gain after what we've been through over the last several months. And I do believe that we're going to have some new faces this year, maybe as many as 15 or more. And so I think there'll be an opportunity for our rookies to do the same thing that 4 years ago, 20 delegates who came in, all brand new, formed a transparency-type caucus. And they tried to have legislation passed that would open up some records. And there were some changes made. And each year there's been a little more change that allowed the public to see more of the inner workings of the General Assembly. So although I'm going to always want for more openness, and I'm always going to be the advocate that says we've got to see more, we've got to be a part of meetings, that secret meetings are not good, that when you're involved in the innermost negotiations of the caucuses, it's tough when we don't know what's actually going on and we get surprised from time to time. So I'm always going to be there asking for that. But I think it's unfair if there's not the same kind of appreciation for the work that goes on and the good that is done. I'm proud to be a part of the state or the Commonwealth that we live in because I do think the basics are good. We've just got to get the problems that we found in these weeds taken care of.
Okay. Now, on that note, if the audience doesn't have any more comment or questions, okay. Any closing comments? Oh, notice how he gave you the closing comment.
Turnabout's fair play. I'll let him go last. No, Tom, I want to thank you and the Times-Dispatch and Megan and Andrew and
Ginger
for coming out tonight. It is really valuable time for us. Again, I would like to echo a little bit what Ginger said. I think we do have a lot to be thankful for in the state of Virginia. Obviously, given the events of this spring and summer, we have some holes in our disclosure laws. And I think I'm telling you, we are taking it very seriously. We are having a broad and deep discussion. We are doing our homework. And I'm hopeful that in January, we're going to have a bipartisan resolution that's going to plug the holes in our gift and disclosure laws. So I look forward to doing that, and I'm confident that we'll get there.
Well, I would like to thank you all and Tom for putting us on the spot like this. We really did come, and we came separately. I didn't know Jimmy was coming, and we really did come to listen. And I'm happy I was afforded this opportunity to share some thoughts with you as well. I want to ask you to continue to stay in contact with us. You know, you can find both of us on the General Assembly website. The email link is right there. You can fire us off an email, not only now, but as things develop. Because even though I'm hoping for a bipartisan bill, and I'm certain that, or as certain as I can be that one will develop, that's just it. It has to develop, and it can't develop without you all's continuing input into the process. So I hope this is the first night while this may be the first night of dialogue, I hope the dialogue continues with my constituents, with Jimmy's constituents, and with all the citizens of the Commonwealth so that we can get a product that all of you believe in. Thank you.
I'm wondering if I could ask the audience's indulgence here and allow me to give the two legislators a gift of a magnet for their cars to remind them.
Do they have to disclose it?
I don't think it costs quite $50.
What's the value? Looks like at least $1.59, I guess, right? Piece. Thank you very much. Just one final question we get out here. Why the low turnout? And I have it on good authority. We're competing with the Folk Festival Food Fest. So when you compete with food, you never win, first off. But is there anything you can extrapolate from the low turnout tonight? Usually you get 80, 100 people. People worn out on topic. Did we not have it soon enough?
My guess, Tom, is the interest in this peaked a month or so ago. You know, it's died down a little bit, and I think the shutdown in Washington D.C. and the annex up in Washington D.C. That we don't have in Virginia probably is just taking the fervor off of it. A little bit.
Yeah. I think I have a little bit different take on it, and I may be right, I may be wrong, but I'm going to take you back to a caucus meeting in the House caucus sometime in the 90s, and we were talking about campaign finance reform, and we had polled it, and there was nothing. There wasn't a single plan that came back with any confidence from the people of Virginia. And I think that's how part of the reason we got here where we are with disclosure laws and where we are with our donations is because as your employees, we can't figure out what's going to make you happy. And so we're going to take another stab at it this time. And I think part of the reason there's such low turnout tonight is because there's a great deal of pessimism out there as to whether anything will get done. Well, something's going to get done. The question is how much input are our bosses going to put into it? And I hope our bosses are talking to us on a daily basis about this because it's going to get done, and we hope we get it done right. But at the end of the day, we really do want to please you, and we don't want to be left guessing as to what you want.
Another way of putting it, maybe the anger and the fervor is always there for the problem, but by the time we get to the solution, there's no passion for it. So maybe we'll set the record in a different direction this time. And I want to thank the two legislators over here. This is totally unrehearsed. I didn't know they were going to show up. And the fact that we had one from each aisle to add to the conversation. Also, I really want to thank Al. I'm sorry if I put you on the spot, but not really. Because I think you added to the conversation. The other thing, too, is we never worry about who doesn't come. We worry about who comes. Thank you very much for showing up. Thank you very much for your eloquency, your good questions. You wove together a mosaic of what the issues are. You had your questions. You had your solutions. And you said it in a succinct, civil way. And that's what the public square is all about. So thank you very much for coming back. We'll see you at number 49, hopefully in November. Appreciate it.